So welcome everyone. This session is called Allyship in Indigenous Research, Steps Towards Reconciliation. I will be your moderator today. My name is Amanda LaVallee. I'm an assistant professor at University of the Fraser Valley. I'm one of the organizers for this event. Right now, I'm speaking from Coquitlam. So I'm on the territory of the Coquitlam First Nation, which lies within the shared traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, the Katzie, the Musqueam, Squamish, Kaikait First Nation, and the Stala Nation. I myself am Red River Métis from Saskatchewan, born and raised, so all my Indigenous knowledge comes from there, Cree and Métis. And I moved out here about 6 years ago. So I am new to this territory. So today I want to welcome our two presenters today. We have Leslie Bryant and Danielle Wilson. Leslie is a regional practice lead for research, knowledge translation, and Indigenous engagement for Interior Health. He lives, works, and plays on the Silex Nation territory in Lake Country, BC, on an organic farm with 3 kids, and grew up in Secwepemc Nation territory up in Williams Lake area. She has worked in Indigenous health research for the last 16 years, mainly in the areas of cultural safety, land-based healing, and colonial system change. Our other presenter is Danielle. She is a member of the Clayokwiat First Nation, located in the Nuchanuth territory of Vancouver Island, and is from the Masso and Frank families, or Masso and Frank families. She is a mother of 3 active children and has been married for 18 years. She has worked for all levels of government, including her own First Nation community, tribal council, federal, provincial, and local levels. More recently, she is the executive director for an Indigenous health center on Manitoulin Island, leading a team of health professionals to promote health and wellness of Anishinaabe peoples. Danielle has a Bachelor of Science from the University of Victoria, a Bachelor of Technology in Environmental and Public Health from British Columbia Institute of Technology, and a master's degree in public health from the University of Waterloo. So I'm pleased to be your moderator today. Just a reminder, there's concurrent sessions going on. So there's Zoom links. This is one of our last presentations. So welcome and take it away.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. When Magdalena contacted me, invited me to speak at your conference, I was very honored that she reached out to me. And what she asked me to present on today was around the concept of allyship. And basically this presentation is an excerpt from the 2-day workshop that we do called Planting the Seeds. And I do that with Indigenous elders from both the Syilx Nation territory and down the Lower Mainland, as well as some of my Indigenous colleagues. And I asked Danielle to join with me today because she was one of my very first Indigenous allies. So we just wanted to start our presentation with just a moment of silence to honor the 215 children that were found in Kamloops on the grounds of the residential school. And I work quite closely with the Secwepemc people, and so it has been a tough week. So just a moment of silence. So some of the other acknowledgements. So these are some of the nations that I've been working with over the past few years under the Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research, where the funding for my position comes from. Danielle, do you want to acknowledge anybody?
I just and just telling you guys a little bit about how my acknowledgement is mostly towards Leslie. She is a very strong and advocate ally. Her and her entire program, the research department at Interior Health, they are very strong supporters of OCAP principles, of our Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And they make fabulous partners. And it was my honor when Leslie asked me to co-present with her today, because I would not be here today if I did not think she was a very strong ally and reflecting the title of this presentation.
Thanks, Danielle. Well, there we go. So just a note about allyship. We need to, my ancestry is both European, as well as we think my great grandmother is Cree, but I can't verify that. So I do identify as a white settler ally. But when I talk to the elders, I always talk about the elders or the ancestors calling me to this work. So I think as a white settler ally, it is important to acknowledge that colonization is still happening. It's a narrative, it's not a history. And then you need to spend a lot of time situating yourself within that colonial narrative. So how do you identify yourself, and how, what responsibilities are you taking on, and situating yourself within that narrative so that you are, Harlan spoke to it today about grounding yourself in your story and your, I think that applies to non-Indigenous Canadians as well, or people in the sense of, what is your understanding of your creation story and your, grounding yourself and what are your beliefs. It's such an important characteristic. Danielle, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and one of the things that I just wanted to add to this is that this presentation is mostly about allyship. So this is a piece of allyship and reconciliation. So the colonial narrative is also a part, like it's not just talking about the colonial narrative and colonization, it's talking about reconciliation. And that's why me being here today is supporting Leslie in that bridging of that relationship in terms of allyship. And this is her presentation with me being her ally. And when I think of reconciliation, I think of reconciliation as the process of, individuals coming to an agreement or coming to a truce. That is really the definition of reconciliation. But in terms of what it means in Canada, I think it's raising awareness about colonization and its ongoing impacts on our Indigenous peoples. So for me, I see this colonial narrative as part and parcel with reconciliation. And me being here today is supporting Leslie in her allyship.
Thank you for that. One of the not main roles, but some of the roles that I have fulfilled over the last 16 years in particular is this bridging. Part of that allyship is this bridging between Indigenous and non-Indigenous ways of knowing and being, and particularly in healthcare, the differences are quite stark. So obviously in the Western medical system, it's very numbers oriented, it's a disease. I was pruning trees just before Christmas and dropped the pruner, and it actually punctured a hole through my lip. And when I went to the Emerge, I kept hearing them referring to me as the lip in whatever bay I was in. And that's a very Western way of identifying people within the system, which is very, inhumane and obviously non-Indigenous. And so not that I'm an Indigenous, I haven't had the Indigenous lived experience, so I only speak of it from the perspective of my experiences with my Indigenous colleagues and friends, and but understanding that where those the differences are, and trying to explain to my non-Indigenous colleagues, like, let's reframe it this way, or let's, that's inappropriate, and just sort of doing that negotiation between the two worldviews. Just a bit of a comment around, I think, and I see it more and more, and even just like a flood of this week with the announcement of the 215 children. I think many non-Indigenous people want to do good, want to reconcile, want to act as allies, and are not 100% sure how to do that. And this bit of this presentation, I just wanted to differentiate between allyship kind of done in a good way versus sometimes I think there's this servant kind of savior way that people might do it, and it's not a healthy way to do that allyship. So just making sure that you're really self-aware and understanding where your motivation is coming from. So not, feeling sorry for and doing things out of a sense of guilt. That's not a great way to approach allyship. And I'll never forget, actually, it was one of my partners, David Archie, said to me, because I think in the beginning I did sort of feel like, I'm here to serve you, like, just let me know how I can be of help to you. And he stopped me and he said, Leslie, it has to be reciprocal. Like, you need to be getting something out of this as well. Like, and so he was that first Indigenous partner to really emphasize that it's a reciprocal relationship. Like, it has to be some give and take and equity within that, so that there isn't like this hierarchical difference of like, I'm here, I'm your hero to help you. It's this equal footing, partners together kind of relationship. Danielle, do you want to add to that at all?
No, I think, yeah, you've captured it very well. As long, and I think it's the emphasis on the reciprocity of the working relationships, that it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, so there's definition that we really liked from Smith et al. Around allyship as this building towards reconciliation of historical and contemporary wrongdoings, and the rectification of that inequitable colonial system. So it's not like a badge I wear, ally. The person I'm working with needs to identify me as the ally. Like, I don't self-identify as an ally, and it's a continuous process, and it constantly needing that self-reflexivity and checking in. I've made a ton of mistakes in my journey as an ally, and thanks to the grace of those that I work with, I've learned from those mistakes, and it's a continual evolution. You don't know what you don't know, and you're really relying on that well-developed relationship to help you through. So the one other thing I'll mention about that is then it takes time. So this is not a fast process. Allyship is basically a lifelong journey, and a lifelong journey with those people that have identified you as an ally. Danielle brought this to my attention just recently, and I thought it was a really powerful, it really hit me, especially with the situation with the children. So there's a long history of allyship in Canada. We have this physician, Dr. Peter Bryce, back in the early 1900s, who did an actual study of the residential schools and identified that there were major issues happening. The government declined release of this report, and then he self-published it in 1922. So it's not a new concept, allyship, but obviously it's been a long, hard journey. So just a little bit more about the practicality. So it is a relationship building of a meaningful partnership. So my natural tendency is to lead with the heart, and it's interesting how for the first time in my career, I feel like I found a home where I can be my true authentic self. So that has been one of the gifts of doing this work. Really leaning into that appreciative inquiry, can you help me understand, that curiosity and not coming with any preconceived judgments. We've already talked about this reciprocity, understanding what's in it for the community. I remember when I was approached at Interior Health to take on this more specific engagement with Indigenous communities under the strategy for patient-oriented research. I was asked, how should we do this? What's the right way of doing it? Should we have some Indigenous people on our patient panel? And I said, well, no, actually, because that's a little bit tokenistic. I think what we should do is approach the communities and ask them if they want to be involved. Like, is this of interest to you? This is the service we can provide. Are you interested in participating in any kind of health research, or is there any research that can be done that would help your community? And I think, and that happened over a couple of years of meetings with different elder groups through different allies that Danielle had originally introduced me to. And some really strong research has come out of that, but it was a long process that took multiple years of relationship building, which is that consistency in building trust. I remember it was a Tanaha elder who said, "Oh, that girl is back." So they may not have they would not have remembered my name, but they over time they saw me coming back, and that built that trust. One of my colleagues, Vanessa Mitchell, who I do the Planting the Seeds workshop with, said she coined this term about it's hard work, but it's also hard work. So this hard work is hard work. The picture is my daughter, Morgan, and this was an actual research project that I'm doing with the Sokoltine Nation, where the youth take these wagons and horses into Wames Lake. It takes 8 days, and it's a way of them using land-based healing to rejuvenate the youth. Danielle, do you have any comment?
No, but I believe you have a question.
Oh, I don't see what is the question?
I can help you. And it was how do you define elder?
Elders are defined within their own communities as elders. So they've been recognized by their, I believe, by their elders as elders. So this is my good friend David Archie, who this day was very special. I got invited to go with them to do sage picking, and it was actually on reserve there in Kamloops. There was a lot of ceremony that we went through before actually going out and harvesting the sage. It was a fantastic day. I feel very fortunate that this is the kind of work that I get to do. And so this partnership is beyond friendship, it's beyond relationship. It's a very long-term relationship where both parties or all parties are moving towards that common goal together. I've heard it also defined as making that safe space for self-determination. So just a bit about what we call in the Western side of things, knowledge translation or knowledge brokering. So in this role of ally, bridging and translating between those two worldviews, I've heard different ways, and we actually made a Tanaha word, or the elders made a Tanaha word that means many ways of working together, moving forward together, and described as we may be in two different canoes, but we're going down the same river together. And then I had this picture of the girls on the horses, and so two horses on the same road in the Chilcotin Valley. So it's just some of the checks and balances as an ally, the things to make sure that you're being aware of. Being super cautious and aware of my privilege as a white presenting person, having some cultural humility, so humbly acknowledging myself as learner rather than expert, honoring the expertise of all of the Indigenous people that I have the very great privilege of working with. This is really important, like understanding my own expendability as this white ally, and the non-expendability of the Indigenous community members. I remember it was fairly recently an elder asked me, do you even know what you're asking of us when you're asking about this part, like having us participate in this research project? And at that moment in time, I didn't. And so he gently sort of guided me through that. When I leverage a relationship in healthcare based on my relationship with that individual, I'm not putting a whole lot on the line, but when an Indigenous person leverages their relationship within their community, it's really huge. And so you just have to be cognizant of what you're asking of that person to do, and that there's a lot of risk for them bringing you in as an ally, and that leveraging that their longstanding relationship as a person within that community. And so we just have to be super careful about that. And admittedly, I hadn't been super aware of that, and in past probably over leveraged my relationships, not understanding that completely. Really respecting research as ceremony, avoiding complacency, so always striving for comfort, but not over leveraging, as I've just mentioned. And then this other piece of, so me as an ally, who am I bringing in? So what researchers am I bringing in to expedite the research that the community has maybe identified? And I've had difficult situations where I have brought in a researcher thinking they were right or thinking they were safe, and actually they weren't, and the complex upset that makes for in that allyship relationship.
Leslie, we have 5 minutes left. Just doesn't.
Okay. Yeah, this is, I think, the last slide. So just the picture there, that's our publication from the Planting the Seeds workshop. It came out in in January in the International Journal of Indigenous Health. And so if you have any further questions, that's a resource for you to look at. Danielle, do you want to add anything?
No, it's just that again, it's leveraging the relationship. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of the work that individuals are doing, but more importantly, as it relates to this conference related to research, it is about the relationship first. And then what follows the relationship are the research principles. And again, the other part that we need to honor too is the capability, the capacity of ownership of the research information as well. That's a part that we also need to honor in any type of the relationship, is the ownership of the data. And working with our Indigenous population, the ownership resides within our Indigenous populations. they're the owners of the data. And I think that's part of the principles that we need to recognize too, that working with, I think it's a valued principle with researchers and intellectual knowledge and intellectual ownership. And I think that that's a principle that we all have a common ground with, and that our Indigenous populations are the guardians of that information. And that was all.
Awesome. So thank you all for allowing me to share my journey as an ally with you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie and Danielle. That was awesome. Any sort of information and personal stories around allyship is needed. It's needed at a research level, but I find it's a needed conversation in our classrooms, where a lot of, I work in social work with students, this misunderstanding of what an ally really means, right? And it's typically a lot of performative allyship, right? So there's a lot of that, I see a lot of that savior and servant, right? So this is a
lot of that self-proclamation, I'm an ally. It's like you actually got to get called in as an ally.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody had a question here. Somebody said, can you include the citation for that article so I can request from the library services? I imagine that's the article that you co-wrote. If you can provide that.
I can send a link. Yeah, and I just noted Valerie's comment about the elders. You're right. I work with a Secwepemc woman who prefers the term knowledge holder as opposed to elder.
Excellent. Is there any other questions from our audience today, from our participants? All right. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, as an ally, to Leslie. That was a beautiful presentation. I really want to know more. So hopefully one day we can meet. I'd like to meet and hook up for some coffee and learn more about your research. Thank you, everyone. And the conference closeout link will be in the main link that started during the day. So if everybody wants to click on that link, and then we can go to the closing talk and discussions with our witnesses today. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.